if everyone's ready to proceed, then I would ask Mr. Byrne to proceed with redirect, please.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Aven, just a few topics to revisit arising out of your cross-examination. First of all, there was a series of questions that was put to you about the documents that you have or had in relation to the project. Where were the documents relating to the project stored while you were living in Costa Rica?
What time frame?
Well, while you were living in Costa Rica.
Well, there's different time. The time frame, just say from 2010 to 2012, 13 is we were keeping them in our office.
And
A
before,
lot of them, not all of them, but
Right.
many of them.
and before that?
We kept them in the. Some of them were maintained in my attorney's office, and some of them in my home.
And by your home, you mean your home in Costa Rica? Or
Yes, yes. 'Cause
and what happened to the documents when you left Costa Rica?
before I left Costa Rica in July of 2012, our office got broken into, and a file cabinet full of documents were stolen, plus a laptop. And then what I had in my home, which is what I shipped to you, some of it I FedExed back to the States.
Okay. Thank you. Now, again on the question of documents, you were asked questions relating to your understanding of Spanish language documents that are relevant in this case, and so on. And indeed, there are numerous documents to which you refer in your statements, which are Spanish language documents, and so on. Have you ever had reason to doubt your understanding of what those documents say? Do you feel you understand those documents?
The relevant ones, I definitely do understand. I mean, the relevant ones were the 2004 Satena resolution, 2006 Satena resolution, 2002 April 2nd, 2008 Manai letter that cleared the land of all the environmental problems. The 2010, 2008 resolution, I think June 2nd, 2008. The Manai reports that were done in the summer of 2010, the Satena resolution that was done in September of 2010, and up until that time, those were the relevant documents that I was very well familiar with.
You'll recall that in relation to the D1 application, you were asked various questions about the advice you took at the time.
Yes.
And various questions were put to you along the lines of, to interrogate whether you took advice as to the significance of being truthful in that D1 application. You recall those questions?
Yes.
Did you need to take advice to understand the significance of being truthful in an official application?
No, I don't need to take advice to be truthful. I generally, act that way. Acted that way most of my life. In that particular, like when the documents, like the D1 document, most of the documents, official documents that I signed was in Spanish. I'm relying on the professionals that I engaged to do various things for me, and all of those official things were done in the Spanish language, and you know, when they got something like the D1 is a perfect example, was presented to me by the professional, and I signed it as something that was necessary to get executed and submitted.
And subject to that point that these were documents, the D1 application was prepared by others and you relied on others and so on and so forth, which you've made clear. Is it your understanding that the D1 application was accurate?
Of course, absolutely.
Now, Mr. Leithley took you to some questions about the so-called Proti report. It's a report on the headed paper of an outfit called Geotest. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Is it your understanding of that report? Or what do you understand that report says about wetlands on the site?
Well, what I read about that report in terms of later, I really didn't become aware of that report until the respondent brought it up. I've never seen that report. But after becoming aware of it and reading it, I didn't find anywhere, and I think I got a translation, and it was translated in English for me. I didn't see anywhere that it mentioned in that report that there's a wetlands. So I really was befuddling about what they were talking about and relying so heavily in that report, saying that there's a wetlands, and they used that as a basis of saying that I duped Satena. Look, I didn't dupe anybody. You know, duping the federal government is a very serious crime. Deceiving a government is a very serious crime, and what I would say is this. I still think Satena is a governing an agency that is still in business in Costa Rica. I haven't heard it close its doors. And when you make a serious charge like that, where is Satena? Where is their statement? Where is somebody? You know, the government could go to, they work for the government. They could go to their office, Satena office, and say, look, we have evidence that David Aven duped you. We want to get a statement from you to confirm that. Isn't that what you do normally when you before you start accusing somebody of serious crimes? Go get your evidence to prove it. Everything I've read in the memorial statement, in all the witness statements, and everything in this, from what the respondent said that I've heard, is what I would call fabricated, fake stories. Like you've heard about fake news. They just create it. None of this stuff that they're saying now was in the criminal trial record.
Okay.
This is all newly created stuff. So,
well, I think anybody who's been following Donald Trump's election campaign will be very familiar with fake news. Suffice to say, I'd like to take you back though to the Proti report, and you'll remember that Mr. Leithley took you to the document at tab 4 in the file.
Do you want me to refer to it?
Yes, please. And this is the submission from Sebastian Vargas after the shutdown.
Where's that located, please?
Tab 4 in that file. And if you just turn back, Mr. Leithley took you to this page, the page that has in manuscript at the top the number 330. The numbering is actually in reverse order for some reason, historical reason. But if you just go to that page for me quickly.
Yes.
Was the geotest or Proti report filed? If you go down to E at the bottom of the page.
Yes.
Do you know whether or not you, as the lead developer, if you like, were obliged to submit that report to CNAC?
As I told the counsel for the respondent, I had no idea that this report was even, the Prodi report was even submitted to CNAC. I mean, this is, because this is a lengthy letter that Sebastian Vargas presented, or prepared, and just told me what it's basically about, that he was lodging a complaint against the illegal shutdown notice, that he felt that it was illegal, and that he asked me to sign it because he was going to file it. So I said okay, and I signed it.
Okay.
But I didn't know that he was even supplying what he was sent along with this letter. He didn't show it to me. I didn't see it.
Okay, thank you. Now, another document that you were taken to is at tab 9. And you'll recall this is the Norton Consulting EDSA PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Now, just like you to turn to back to page 5 in
Okay.
that PowerPoint pack. And you'll recall that Mr. Leithley made put various points to you in relation to the site plan, the land use summary that appears there.
Yes.
Now, first of all, do you know what Norton Consulting and EDSA were seeking to communicate with this land use summary at this point in time?
I think it was a general design of what they would think would include their concept of a project that they were looking at. And like I said, we visited Los Sueños, and they were quite impressed with the water amenities that Los Sueños had, and I think that's why they designed some of these, areas where they had some pools and things like that. But it's not to indicate that there's a wetlands there, but just a area where there could be some water projects.
Right.
In fact, it says that the ponds and water features are 3.6 hectares out of a total land use of 37.3 hectares.
Right. And to be absolutely fair to Mr. Leithley, he did, in the end, point out to you that the water features are marked on the plan, but in very small print there, potential lake feature and so on. You see that?
I can't read it. I really can't.
You can't read it.
I can't see it.
Okay. And again, if you just turn up to page 45 in the same pack of slides. Now we see something different from Norton Consulting and EDSA at this point. Do you have any comments about what is represented in this slide in relation to the presence of wetlands on the project site?
Well, I think it's a representation of where the units are going. The same, looks like the similar water features, and just a conceptual land use plan for the project.
Okay, thank you. Now, just want to put a couple of quick points to you in relation to the criminal litigation. If you could turn first to tab 7. Now, you'll recall that Mr. Leithley took you to a couple of emails sent to your Gmail address.
Yes.
And in the email there we see a rather aggressive, verging on racist message that was sent to you by somebody. Is there? Do you remember if there was an attachment to this email?
I don't think so.
Right.
I don't remember one.
And can you see any reference to an attachment to that email there?
No, I don't.
Okay. And if you just turn back to tab 6, but the last page. And Mr. Leafley pointed this out to you and pointed to the references to your email address again. You see that?
Tab
Not-
6, last page. Okay. Is
Tab
that the
6.
one that says Court of Punta Arenas? You're summoned again for trial? Is that what you're
At the
talking
top it says delivery status notification relay. You may have to turn over another page. So the very last page of tab 6. Can somebody help him, please?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, it's. Wait a second. Wait, is this 6? Oh, maybe a minute. 6.
Go.
Okay.
All right.
Is
So,
it?
so yes, you have the page.
Okay.
So you see your email address appears on this automatically generated message,
Yes.
and Mr. Leafley pointed that out to you. Now, behind that, so if you go back to the front of the document, does that document look like it is an email?
Is this 9C?
Yep.
Looking at? No, that looks like a letters and on the court's stationery.
Right, and if you turn over, you see some images there. Do those look like emails?
No, they look like stamps or something.
Right. Do you think those might be attachments to the email that's recorded on page 997?
They could be, but I'm not certain.
When have you ever had difficulty receiving an email because it's got an attachment?
All the time. Even from you.
Surely not.
Yes, I'm telling you.
What can I say? Right. Now, Mr. Leafley asked you a question in relation to security arrangements that you might have put in place after the shooting incident.
Yes.
And he put it to you that you, he asked you about private security arrangements that you confirmed you did make in the immediate aftermath.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Now, I'm not asking you as a lawyer because you're not a lawyer, but just as a layman, do you consider yourself familiar with the concept, the general protections that an accused person in criminal proceedings is provided in law, whether it be Costa Rica or the United States or most countries around the world? Do you think generally you have an understanding of the types of protections an accused person is provided?
Let me make sure I understand the question. Under what circumstances? A similar.
If a person is accused of a crime
Yes.
and is subjected to and is charged with a criminal offence, do you think you understand roughly the types of protections that person will get at law?
Are you talking about security protections?
No, general protections and safety in the general sense, not the sort of personal security against a shooting sense, but the general
You mean like
presumptions.
during the course of the trial?
During the entire process. Just in general terms. It
In
doesn't
general
need-
sense, okay. So when I was...
I'm not asking you to enumerate them, just asking whether you're generally aware of the types of protections, human rights type protections, due process type protections that a person has.
Yeah, I'm generally aware of it.
Right, and is one of those usually that a person is, generally speaking, presumed to be innocent?
Presumed to be innocent?
Yes.
I think that's, yes, that's my definitely understanding.
So, speaking from a layman's point of view, does it seem reasonable to you when a state is prosecuting a person, is putting them through a criminal process, that they should look to that person to protect themselves, bearing in mind they are at law
Objection.
innocent?
I think this is a leading question. Does it seem reasonable to you? I'm afraid it suggests exactly what the answer should be. I think we should strike that entire question and we shouldn't have an answer.
And
What
I
is your
think,
view?
Mr. Leatley is right.
I'm happy to rephrase, sir. What do you think of a situation in which a person is being accused, it may be encouraged or expected to make their own security arrangements?
Well, it depends upon the circumstances, I think. In other words, if I'm accused, I was accused of a crime I didn't commit. Okay, so we show up at the courthouse. There's a guard at the courthouse protecting you there. I didn't have any security, I didn't expect security there in terms of, to and from there. I mean, I went there with my attorney, Javon, and everything's fine. However, once the shooting happened, that's a whole different ballgame, and I did expect that some type of security procedures to be put in place because I was almost killed, and actually I was, we tried to get some security and we tried to get some help, and as Nestor told you, as you heard his testimony, and I went to the U.S. Embassy and, hey, look, told him what happened, and Nestor called him, and this was the time of the ambassador in Benghazi was killed along with three other people, and the embassy said, look, we can't protect you, and I took it, well, okay, I can't protect their own ambassador, who am I? I'm a nobody, so, I'm insignificant compared to the U.S. ambassador, so I was, so to me, there's nobody to look after me except me, and I think if this happened to anyone in this room, that you would have done the same thing I did. Get out of danger. Very simply. And so I had to kind of take steps that I could take to get out of danger. And my family, they were petrified of what happened and pleaded with me to leave the country before I got killed. So, and then after I left, there was, I think Nestor testified, he tried to get additional assurances. Now, one thing I want to make note of, which hasn't been raised here, but in January of 2014, when that hearing happened, when Jovan was put on trial the second time, I was in a hospital in the States and had surgery within a week or so, virtually at the same time. And I sent letters from my doctors from the hospital. I sent them to Manuel Ventura, who is my attorney, and he forwarded them to the court. And they didn't care. They didn't care. And they put out the arrest warrant immediately. And the next thing I know, there's a Interpol report, and it was a total. So they just kept ramping it up. And after I looked at the Interpol report, which we got from the respondent, Interpol clearly told them, look, according to 83.1.1, I think, as I remember reading it, this is not a crime that rises to the level of reporting people to Interpol. It's like somebody steals a candy bar from a 7-Eleven and they don't show up for hearing, so you report them to Interpol. No, that's not what Interpol's for. They're for serious crimes. And they told them. I read it myself after Mr. Burns sent it to me. And they still insisted. They still, tried to get tried to appeal to Interpol to, get the red notice issued for me. It was, it's mind-boggling. I mean, nobody can believe. I tell this story to people, they don't believe it. They think I'm kidding them when I tell them what happened.
Okay, I'll just come back very briefly to Interpol in a moment, but before that, before we leave the topic of security arrangements, just wanted to ask whether the Costa Rican police did anything in relation to the shooting incident.
Again, Manuel Ventura, thank God for Manuel. I mean, I don't know what I'd do without him. But he went, as you know, to get these reports, trying to get the police report, trying to get the report from the prosecutor in Capos, where I filed the complaint against Christian Bagantes. And he had difficulty getting them. And when he finally did get them, there was nothing much in them. Okay.
And just on that point about Interpol, you were taken to the document at tab 8. If you just, and you'll recall this was the international arrest warrant for extradition purposes, and you indicated that you did not receive that document or see a copy of it, or you weren't aware of it.
No.
That was your evidence. Perhaps you want to go back to your first witness statement, have a look at paragraph 240, and just comment on it, just if there's anything further you wanted to say in relation to the Interpol reference.
Paragraph what?
240. This is on page 73 of your first statement. You may feel you've already covered these points sufficiently, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity, given that you were taken to the arrest warrant itself.
240?
Yeah.
You want me to read this?
Just read it quickly.
Okay.
If there's anything further that you wish to say, given what appears there, please let the tribunal know.
This was really amazing. I was talking to Louise Woods over there one time, and I was talking to her about my rumors about an Interpol, notice being issued for me, and Louise, the next thing I know, she looked it up and she says, "You're there. Your name is there." I says, "You're kidding me." So, no, that's an accurate.
And that was the first time you learned that you were on the
Yes.
the red list at
Yes,
Interpol?
exactly. First time. Yeah.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Pero, do you have any questions? Mark Baker? Please.
Mr. Aven, first question concerns citizenship.
Yes.
Allegations have been made that you represented yourself in your business dealings in Costa Rica as an Italian citizen. Would you comment on that, please?
Well, if you look, there's I think many times that I was represented myself as U.S. citizen. In fact, if you look at the first documents that we initiated the purchase agreements in 2002, it clearly identifies me as a U.S. citizen. I do have dual nationality, but I don't have any attachments to Italy. My dominant residence has always been the United States. I don't do any business in Italy. I don't have any bank accounts, own property. I don't vote there. I don't have anybody I correspond with over there. I haven't been there in 10 years. I may have been totally to Italy probably 5 times in my life. So, so my dominant residence is no question United States. I was born in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, graduated high school there, graduated college from Baylor University, 1964. So, and been living and working in the United States all of my life, except for the time period I was living in Costa Rica.
So as you sit here today, do you remember ever representing yourself in any of the transactions in Costa Rica as an Italian citizen?
Yes, I do. And I did it as, just as an option. I just had the Italian passport, and number of occasions I did. But I mean, I think for the project, it was mostly, I held myself out as U.S. citizen.
Do you have an EU passport too?
Say again?
I said, do you have an EU passport?
I do not. Oh, wait a second.
Sorry.
I have an Italian passport, so that's an EU passport, I
right.
think, right? Yeah.
I didn't know if there was still a separate Italian identity card that went with the EU passport or not.
No, I think they're all EU passports.
Yeah, that's
now.
what I thought too. Okay. So the next set of questions then comes to what due diligence you did before you bought the property. So as I understand your testimony, you and Mr. Janney were in Costa Rica, and you saw this property, and you came to the decision pretty quickly that you spotted a lot of opportunity there. Is that right?
Yes. Well, let me explain that. It's an interesting story. I was living at Fort Lauderdale at the time, and David Janning was living in Orlando, and we were being friends for many years, and and I was looking around Florida, to do something, and this was so expensive. I mean, this was in the year 2000, and things were really expensive, and it was kind of booming. And a lot on a canal, I remember this clearly, a lot on a canal in Florida in 2000, not a nice canal, maybe I would say 200 by 200 square feet, something like that, not big. It was $1 million. So when David Janney asked me to go down to Costa Rica, I'd never been there, and he was doing some mission work down there. So I said, okay. So I went down there, and we started looking around. I went down there with him a number of times. So one of the trips we made was to Estorils, and we looked at a number of properties, but a lot of them were inland, and it didn't appeal to me. And I knew the real value of property was near the water. Because that's where people want to be. They want to be near the water. So when we saw this property in Estorils, it was like 100 acres on a beautiful beach in a area that had roads all around it, gently rolling hills, and built up community around it with restaurants and shops and homes and condos and everything built. And this was in an area that was elevated. It was gently rolling hills for a little more than what they wanted for this small lot in Fort Lauderdale. So I said, David, this has to be a good deal. It's 2 hours from the States. So part of the due diligence you ask about is looking at Costa Rica as very close to access to the United States, Canada. I think at the time I checked, 2 million visitors a year were coming. A lot of American expats were moving there. A lot of Canadians were moving there. It had a huge expat presence. So we, immediately, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. You get a 100 acres for what they're selling a small lot on a canal in Fort Lauderdale for, and people are coming down and moving down there. It was to us a no-brainer that this could be a very profitable investment. So that was, the basis of our reasoning and the due diligence we did, comparing what was 2 hours from Costa Rica and that people were coming there. And also, don't forget, another thing was happening is, this is right after 9/11. So people weren't traveling that much. There was, things ramping up quickly in the Far East, Mid East. People weren't traveling, so we thought that there would be more people traveling down to Central America because really, Costa Rica, I love Costa Rica. I was the biggest fan. I mean, I was telling everybody, Costa Rica's great. The people are wonderful. They're friendly. And I was encouraging people to move to Costa Rica because I believed in it so much. And so I became a resident there. So I was in full in with Costa Rica. And, but I did do a lot of due diligence before I, moved down there.
So specifically, did you hire anybody or consult with anybody before you made the purchase about land development restrictions or environmental regulations in Costa Rica? Or did that come after you all had secured the purchase?
No, I think before I bought it, it was considered buy. I mean, you don't invest that kind of money without doing your due diligence. I met the owner of Los Sueños, Bill Royster, had conversations with him. There was another development down from us, Mr. I think Ramirez was running it, Rancho Santa Fe development. Juan Carlos Esquivel, who I was introduced to in Escazú, San Jose. He had a lot of experience. His great-grandfather, I think, was ex-president of the country. So, and we talked a lot about what the procedures would be to do a development project. And he stepped me through that. And he was the key guy, the key attorney that really handled things from 2002 until I moved down there in 2005. He was the one handling everything for me after we bought the property.
So after you acquired the property and you began to retain a land use development firm in order to assist with the development of your ideas, and then you began to hire the other professionals that you've told us that you relied upon for the beginning of the EV process, right?
Yes.
How did those professionals come to your attention? How did you decide to hire the people that you did hire?
Well, some of them came to my attention through Juan Carlos. And then Mauricio Mucio came to my attention because I knew he was working on the Costa Montana project, which was a huge project not too far from Estorils. And I actually, frankly, met Mauricio. I remember meeting him at this La Serena hotel that was in Estorils when we were having a community meeting there about just community problems, right? And Mauricio happened to be there, and so we were talking. We started a conversation. And he told me what he was doing, and with Costa Montana, and I did some checking on him, and he had a fairly good reputation. So that's how I started a relationship up with him.
So when the process really got going in terms of the applications being made, we heard from Mauricio yesterday about the way in which the team contributed to the development of the D1. Did you have the D1 explained to you, since you are not capable of operating in the Spanish language? Or tell us how that happened before it was filed.
Okay, so the process was, depending upon how big of a project you have, what kind of density you have for homes. Say, for example, you have a home you want to put on 5,000 square meters. That takes there's no even check, not even checking on that. It's just, okay, 5,000 square meters, one home, get a permit. The more density you have, then there's more requirements. The D1 was for the most dense type of projects, and that was the most extensive type of approval process you had to go through. And so Museo came up with the conceptual design for the condo project, and there's a lot of talks about the easements, and I heard all the conversations, and Mr. Nikan was asking questions about it. But let me be clear about this, because it's talked about a lot, and like we did something, something we did illegally. There's no illegal things going on here. Before we did anything with the project, I got my attorney at the time, Gabriel Perez, recommended that the law in Costa Rica was that you could subdivide off parcels from the main highway. And this is the law, and that you could put a 60-meter easement into the off of the main highway and build and put 4 lots off of each side of the road. So I heard Mr. Nikan question about a little like what is the easement. The thing with that is, it's the easement means that the road is an easement to the lots. It's not an easement into the into the condo property, but it's an easement that will go through the center, and then that easement will permit the lot owners to access their lots. Once the homes are built, I think there is a plan to donate the street to the municipality. That's what our plan was. So those lots were subdivided along the main road, and once those lots were subdivided, then Mauricio Museo applied for the condo permit, did the concept, the master site plan for the condo project, and that's what was submitted. And there was and I don't want there to be confusion, because there was confusion at the criminal trial where Mr. Martinez was accusing me of subdividing the project after we got the permit, which was totally wrong. All right, it's totally just wrong. But that's what was being purported. So, and I got a legal advice from attorney again. Look, as I said, I don't know what the laws are in Costa Rica, so I have to depend upon the legal professionals to do things. And this is one of the suggestions that was made by Gabriel Perez, the attorney I was using at the time, and he handled everything. He did all the legal work on that.
So if I understand the point of the easements, I understand the access point, but was it done that way because the law gives you a right to do the subdividing up to a certain number? Did I hear that right in your testimony?
The subdividing up to a certain number. You mean on the easement?
For the
Yeah.
lots for the easements.
Yeah, the easement was 60 meters. Right. This is the law. And off of that road, you can put 4 lots. And so that's what was done, and that's when Mr. Perez set up. He registered the whole thing. We got it subdivided, and he took care of all the legal aspects of that. Okay. And another point I want to make, because I heard just yesterday that the council was making a big deal about with Mr. Bermudez about him getting a permit to move earth for the easement, and I think I heard this. Now, if I'm wrong, I can be corrected on this, but I think I heard that we represented that to get the construction permits, but actually, that earth moving permit was on. I checked it this morning. It was on July 22nd. That exhibit that they were looking at, and we got the construction permits on July 16th. So, and we immediately wanted to work on one of the easements. And this just goes to show you, I didn't need to get that earth moving permit. It wasn't a lot of dirt we were moving. But I said, look, Esteban, this is more dirt than we're permitted to move legally. I mean, it's a little bit more dirt, but I don't want to be doing anything illegally. Could you get me the earth moving permit? He says, sure. And that's so he made the application for it. Like he was saying yesterday, that, which I was viewing, that it doesn't matter if you get an earth moving permit for a project or a single home. They're all the same. So, but I just wanted to make it clear that that was not misrepresented, because at the time he got that earth moving permit, we already had the construction permits for the easements.
Also yesterday, and the first day for that matter, we heard the terms fractionalization and fragmentation. And I've come to understand, I believe, that one of those is fully permissible, the other apparently may not be. Would you comment on the Museo plan to either fractionate or fragment, or whatever you'd like to say about that?
Well, actually, that wasn't, Museo come up with it, but my lawyer, Gabriel Perez, is the one that actually did it. It wasn't Museo that did that. The lawyer recommended that whole, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the distinction between what fractionalization and fragmentation. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have no clue. And that's why I depended on lawyers at all times. So at all times, I relied upon attorneys, Costa Rica attorneys. I didn't just go out there and just do things because I want to do them. You know, we have a multi-million-dollar project. You have to be making the right moves and doing the right things and getting the right advice and getting the right legal work and getting the right professional work that you need done. And I'm not going to be doing like the earth moving print. I didn't need it. I didn't need to get it. Nobody would know it, but I knew it, and I said, look, it's not worth doing something wrong and having problems with it. Another thing I want you to share with you is that Minor Arce testified yesterday, and I think, you know, they went in great detail about the September forestry report he done for it. I ordered that out of an abundance of caution. I wasn't required to get that. But we were starting the development in the project. We were going to be starting it, and I wanted to know, hey, what is permissible under the law with regard to what trees can be cut down, and so that's why that report, I commissioned that report by Minor Arce, and he told me, he says, look, any trees planted along the fence line can be cut, any fruit trees, any planted trees, anything under 15 centimeters, and he was, I think, pretty specific with me in terms of what we could do. And this notion that we cut 400 trees down illegally is another fabricated fake news story that's been going around there. I don't remember seeing any pictures of huge amounts of 400 trees cut down. In fact, on May 15th, when the prosecutor, Mr. Martinez, come down to the project site, 2 weeks after the INTA report was gotten to us, I thought we were going down there and I thought we were going to meet Mr. Martinez, and he was going to say, look, based upon the INTA report, you know, we can't proceed because now we got think about this, you're attorneys. We got two contradictory reports, and he's trying to make a claim about accusing me for a crime. Now we got two contradictory reports, one from INTA saying there's no wetlands, which counsel said he couldn't understand why they did that. Well, INTA's a professional. I mean, they're the professional organization. So, and then Menai report said wetlands. How can you proceed with a criminal case against the person when you got two contradictory reports by government agencies that you asked for? I mean, it's mind-boggling. So, but what I wanted to say, I remember asking the prosecutor when he said, then he said he had a group of a team of the Menai people there, and he said, can we borrow some of your guys? We want to go stake out the wetlands. I said, what? Stake out what wetlands? Didn't you read the Inter report? And Mr. Martinez said, and it was translated, but my attorney was there, and he said, and this is what he said to me: I don't believe that report. Now, I want you to think about that statement from coming from the mouth of a criminal prosecutor. I don't believe that report. Is the law based on a belief system, or is the law based on facts and evidence? A prosecutor, one that's competent and operating the right way, that's objective evidence. You don't have an option to not believe. You have to believe it. In fact, when we talked to Esau Chavez, Manuel and I was telling him all about this, and I showed him the copy of the April 2nd Menai report that they needed before they cleared the land environmentally. And I said to him, Mr. Chavez, I said, Mr. Chavez, did you get this report? Yeah, we got that. I said, did you believe it? You know what he said? We have to believe it. We have to believe it. We have no choice. But yet, when Mr. Martinez gets a copy from a government agency that he ordered, he says he doesn't believe it? I mean, that's just mind-boggling. Now, one more, in that same, I don't mean to belay it, but this is so interesting. So I kept saying to him, he says, he started to, you cut 400 trees. I said, where's the 400 trees we cut? Show them to me. Where are they? And I kept insisting. So finally he says, he takes us to the far end of the project. We walk from the end of the project all the way to the road, which was a long way, all the way back. There was nothing there. Nothing. And it was pristine because we weren't even working back there. So I get back to the beginning where we started, and I was so frustrated. And Esteban Bermudez was with me, and Jovan, and I was mad. I says, where's the 400 trees? Where's the 400 trees you said we cut? And so him and Ms. Picardo, they got mad now. They got mad because I was calling them on where's the 400 trees. They go 50 meters into the property, and they go like this. Okay, so Esteban and I walk in, and he points to a tree. It's like this big. And I said, that's a small tree. And here's what he says to me. And to get an idea into the mentality of this guy, he says, well, if you kill a small child, isn't that murder? And I said, are you relating cutting a small tree with killing a child? He says, yes. Now, what are you going to do with this kind of thinking?
Well, I'm going to ask you a different question. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So what I want you to react to is a slide that I saw in respondent's opening.
Okay,
And
which one is it?
if I could ask for this to be handed to the witness, it's not in the binder in front of you. But I want you to comment on this, please, so that the record is clear
Okay.
with your testimony. Thank you. So what we have, this was in respondent's opening remarks, and it's a chart which has 3 columns. And the first column is labeled or headed as site, and then it has EV across the top, and then construction permits. It's a simple chart. If I get this wrong, I'm sure my friend will correct me, but I take this chart to mean that the first condominium site, it says an EV was granted. Do you agree with that?
Sir,
Yeah.
you know, why can't the respondent put in dates here? Because there was EVs, a number of EVs issued by Satena. And when he was going through his chronological order that I saw, he left off a number, he left off a Satena resolution, he didn't include that. He left off the November 15th Satena resolution, he didn't include that. So without some kind of, the condominium section, unlawfully obtained, this is, yeah, I have it, yeah, I got it here.
Well, you've anticipated what was going to be my next question after I'd gotten your answer on EV, because it seemed to me that there were a whole series of documents that took place at different points in time that had expirations, that had requirements for things to be done in certain periods of time. But as you sit here today, you can't tell me, without having something in front of you, as to which ones were granted when and where for each one of the parts of the development?
Well, there was numerous ones, okay, and I'll tell you what I can recall.
Okay.
2004 Satena resolution, 2006 Satena resolution, 2008 Satena resolution, 2010 Satena resolution, and April 2nd, 2008 Menai clearance letter for the EV that we got in, and when I say resolution, it's an EV, okay, because once the permit is, I call it a permit, is issued into a resolution, then at that point in time, according to Julio Eduardo, it becomes a government order that everyone is required to comply with. All public and private institutions are required to comply with. And the problem, as I said in my statement, that none of the functionaries in the Costa Rica government complied with it. And we have the testimony. You don't have to, and so, okay, David Aven saying this, don't, you know, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's, you know, but there's a guy that we got a statement from, Mr. Jorge Bersenio, from the municipality, who dug deep into what was going on in Las Olas, and even went to the TAA in San Jose to do his due diligence. And this is the guy that, and you probably read his statement. And what did he say? What did he tell the government functionaries? Everything you're doing is illegal, and it even can cause civil and criminal penalties on you guys, and it could cause serious damage to the Treasury. What happened? Nobody paid attention to him. So this is not David Aven saying it. This is not George Burns saying it. This is a guy in the government saying it. If you look at Fernando Zambado's statement, and he was an ex-president, ex-housing minister. His statement, and I knew him personally, got to know him in 2006. And I was working with him when he was a housing minister to put low-income housing down into the Esterias area. What did they do? He wanted to run for president. So what do they do? They falsely charge him with a crime, just like they did with me, and he had to resign, and that killed his ability to run for president and also killed his reputation. What did he say? Here's what he said. This is a guy that was an ex-U.S. ambassador, ex-UN representative, two-time foreign minister, and was going to run for president of the country. And they did the same thing to him as they did to me. They charged him falsely with a crime. And here's what he said in his statement that I remember. This kind of criminality has to stop, because if it doesn't, it's going to really impair the ability of Costa Rica to attract foreign investment. Now, these aren't U.S. investors saying this. These are seasoned Costa Rica dignitaries and high-ranking government officials. Well, Jorge Bersenio wasn't high-ranking, but Mr. Zambado certainly was.
Same discussion with, my understanding is that the construction permits were ultimately issued by the municipality. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and to your knowledge, were construction permits obtained as required for each section of the development?
Yes, there were, absolutely. And this nonsense about the condominium section unlawfully obtained, this is just false. This is false. Easement and other laws. What's that X mean? I don't even know what this X means. It's not explained. It says X.
I think that means the allegation is that there were no EVs,
They what?
that there were no EVs.
What, they weren't required. The EV, and this is, look, this is not my rules. This is Costa Rica's rules. If we follow the rules, it's like, look, what is this business about? If you follow the rules and you do the things the right way, they come along and say, oh, those weren't the rules? No. I mean, the lawyers we got advice from told us what the rules were, and we followed them. And then when we follow them, they arbitrarily come along and say, oh, that's a different interpretation. That's not what it means. So I totally reject this kind of arbitrary, capricious decision-making where they can just arbitrarily, look, when governments issue valid permits, developers have to be able to rely on those permits. You can't make it a game of now you see it, now you don't. It's not a magic trick. You have to be able to rely on those. You're spending millions of dollars developing a project, and it has to be stable. You have to have a stable environment, a stable government that when you follow the rules, you pay a lot of money to get permits, they're not going to be yanked away by some rogue prosecutor that for whatever reason decides he's not going to follow the government law.
When, for the first time, did you become aware that environmental processes, in your words, could be used in order to cause previously issued permits to be canceled? Was that before or after you bought the property?
Oh, much later. Much later. We bought the property in 2000.
So none of your due diligence before buying the property had shown you that there had been the use of environmental laws in the way that you're just describing?
I'm not sure I understood that question.
I'm just trying to find out what you knew and when you knew it about the way in which the environmental laws you say could be used in a capricious fashion. If you had seen examples of that prior to making your investment, that's my first question.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm glad you asked that question. It started to become apparent to me when Mr. Martinez came on the scene in February of 2011. And I want you to understand this clearly, because when he came on the scene in 2011, something that when you see in this chronology, a couple things were happening, and there's a certain situation with respect to the project where it was. In summer of 2010, Mr. Buccellato started making complaints. He's a competitor, so he made a complaint with Satena and other agencies, but Satena. So what's Satena do? And Satena and Menai. So what do? Satena and Menai, Satena sends down an inspector to say, okay, we got a complaint. And I'm going to tell you what, Satena absolutely was the proper agency. I never had a minute's problem with them, except one time when they canceled the permit in April. But they came down and did the inspection. They issued the permit. They issued the resolution in September 1st, 2010. They rejected Buccellato's complaint. And now that resolution was another law, another government order that the functionaries and public and private people were required to comply with. Buccellato was a private person. Martinez was a public official. So they reject it, and specifically Buccellato is mentioned in that resolution. So what happens? 5 months later, Buccellato takes his complaint to Martinez, the prosecutor, according to his statement, on February 2nd, I think he says. And he started a complaint. Then 6 days later, he gets a complaint from, I think, Picardo, Louis Picardo, or vice versa. I'm not sure which come first, but I think it was Buccellato made his complaint on the 2nd, and Picardo makes his complaint on the 8th. Now, think about this. Is that a coincidence that Martinez got those two complaints 6 days apart? And what did Martinez do next? The very thing he said, on the February 8th, he immediately seized the Satena files. Is that a normal reaction? Would you think somebody would call Satena, would call me, would call somebody, talk, say, what's going on here? No, he immediately seizes the files, which has to tell you something. So when he seized the files, what did he have to see? He had to see that September 1st resolution that Satena rejected Buccellato's complaint. Now, to me, a competent prosecutor, after seeing the resolution that Satena issued on September 1st, and now Buccellato is making the same complaint to the prosecutor 5 months later, would seem to me a competent prosecutor say, Mr. Buccellato, you made this complaint to Satena 5 months ago. They ruled on it. They made a determination. They rejected your wetland complaint. So I must tell you something. Do you know by law that you're required to comply with this complaint? You're a private citizen, and you are required to comply with government orders. He didn't tell him that. And he should have said, and I am required to do that too. What did he do? He takes Buccellato's complaints and runs with it. And he refuses to comply with a government order. He could have stopped it right there and then. If he would have let Satena, and Menai would have let Satena just carry out their prime directive in being the agency that was given the authority by the government and the courts as the only agency that has the power to issue these EVs, and they put the force of law behind it to make sure everybody would be required to follow it. And I said in my statement, what the government was trying to do is to stop the dysfunction that's happened in our case that's led us here. So if Mr. Martinez would have just followed the law and complied with his own law, we wouldn't be here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Aven, I just have a few questions from you. You describe in your statement and in claimant's memorial there is a reference to the participation that each one of the investors has. And roughly it reads that you have 28% of the investment, whereas Samuel Donald Aven has 44%, and others complete the 100% of that investment. But I note in your statement that over the overall investment that has been placed in the project, you have invested roughly 50% of the amounts of the project. This is that not only, and this includes the investments and the income earned by lot sales, because you state that your initial investment was $797,000 and you made an additional $4 million roughly. This is in paragraph 32 of your first witness statement.
Okay.
How is it that if you have made a very significant amount of investment in the project, way beyond what the other investors you have stated have made, you have 28% of the investment only?
Well, this is a family type business. Got my sisters, my brother, good friends, cousin. And this was just a decision that was made among the family. I was going to profit when the project was developed. All right, when it was successful. So this was a decision how we were going to, divide it up between us. But the revenue I was really going to earn, as well as David Janning, and Roger, my cousin Roger Raguso, who is going to be doing the construction management and also the management of the facility once it was built. And I was going to make my money in the back end, all right? And I was willing to put additional money up to get this thing going and make my profits on the back end of the project, which I thought would be fair. So I didn't take any money out. I didn't take a salary. I didn't take any money out of this for my services. I didn't make a penny on this. David Janney didn't either. Nobody did. None of the U.S. investors took any money out of this. All the money that we got from the sales was plowed back into the project 100%. So this was just a family decision how we were going to divide the profits up. But I know what you're talking about, but I was going to make my money on the back end, and significant money.
When you refer to back end, could you please explain just
When it was finished, when it was developed.
when it was developed?
When it was developed, yes.
You would be making 28%.
Well, no,
28% of the whole business profits of the venture.
Well, but also then we had arranged what we call success fees. In other words, when you're successful at something, you get paid for it. And so I was going to take my success fee, which was significant, on the back end. And like I say, this was just a family arrangement, and we were, assigned to various interests based upon.
Do you recall what your success fee was going to be?
Based upon the profits. Based upon the profits.
Was there a specific percentage, or were you going to identify it later, or were the investors?
Well, I was thinking in the neighborhood of 25 to 30%. But look, everything's fluid. Everything's adjusted. Nobody knows what the future is going to be. So, just like when the crash came in 2008, we had to adjust. So, but the plan was to, between 25 and 30% success fee on the back end.
The other question that I have deals with what you were mentioning that you wanted to correct, and this was on the ownership of La Canícula,
Yes.
the company that has the ownership of the maritime zone property.
Yes.
My understanding, and I believe your understanding also, is that a Costa Rica national must have 51%, no less than 51% of the shares of a company which holds property in that area. Is this correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned and you accompanied a copy of an agreement that was executed with Ms. Paula Murillo.
Yes.
But as I read this agreement, and perhaps it's my training as a lawyer, do you identify this? I'm not sure this is attached to the crossbinder in your case, but it is the exhibit that your lawyers have submitted as C-242, and perhaps your counsel may provide a copy of that to you. But you may recall that this is the agreement whereby 51% of the shares of the Canícula are presumably transferred to Ms. Paula Murillo.
Yes. Yeah, I'll explain that. I mean, let me get a copy of it. and
Yes,
can
I
look
think
at
it would be best
Yeah.
if you had a copy.
Thank you, Luis. Okay, what is your question on this now?
My question is, as I read this document, I see that there is no transfer of ownership because there's reference to a service that Ms. Murillo is going to provide, that she is not the true owner because she will neither receive the income of any business gain, and you have the opportunity at any time to replace her with another person without payment of any purchase price by appointing a different owner.
This is one of those twerky things in Costa Rica. You have to understand that they have this law that if you foreigners buy property on the concession, that a foreign national has to have own 51%. But it's understood that this, and normally the foreign nationals are attorneys or people you have confidence in, they won't steal it. But normally, it's understood that they're just holding it. It's like a placeholder, okay? And you generally have an arrangement where, okay, they're holding this as a placeholder, but they're holding it like almost like in trust for the person that bought it, the foreigner that bought it. So you're right. I mean, look, but there's this is the way they do things down there. I mean, so before Paula, let me explain the chain of events in here. The first person that owned the concession, the 51% interest, was Juan Carlos, because he's the guy that was handling everything for me from 2004 until 2002 till 2005 when I moved down there. So so he was the 51% owner, but he actually, there was I don't know if you saw the purchase agreement, the trust agreements. Well, we did, Roger Crivera, who's one of probably the top attorneys in Costa Rica with the Battaglia law firm, looked at that very carefully, and and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not, but he critiqued those documents, and his conclusion was that at all times, a Costa Rican held the interest in that, and he has some other document. He found some other document somewhere that it shows that Juan Carlos was holding 100% in trust for the investors. And so what happens when the way you register the ownership is there's a shareholder book in the corporate books, and you record the shareholders' interest in those shareholder books. So when you make a change, you just you have a meeting and you have a resolution. This person is going to transfer those shares to another Costa Rican. So this was just a letter of intent between Ms. Murillo and the U.S. investors, but the actual event took place when Juan Carlos resigned and Paula's name was entered in the shareholder book as the 51% owner.
But when you transferred this to her, she did not pay a purchase price to you.
No,
It was
no,
rather the other way around. You would be paying to her for her services.
Yeah, okay, now exactly. So look, of course, anybody that does this, it's just, I'm sure a lot of attorneys hold things in trust for their clients, or they do things, for their clients, and, you charge them a service fee too. I mean, attorneys charge them a service fee too. We paid Juan Carlos a service fee for that, of course. But it was always under the assumption, under the understanding that, look, the Costa Rican didn't put in the investment in. The Costa Rican didn't put any money in. This was just one of the quirky things in Costa Rica law, and it's done commonly. This is the way it's done down there. We didn't invent this the way things are done. Again, another example, following the rules that are established in Costa Rica. So this is the way it's done.
I think that there's a big risk there that Ms. Murillo, or indeed if she were to predecease you, if she decided she wouldn't sell
Oh,
or sign back, I think that your attorneys, I think, weren't being very careful in advising you, or you yourself, because this would be almost a common sense issue of the risks that you would have if Ms. Murillo decided not to, quote, sell back that percentage to you.
You're right, and that's why you have to be very careful of who you do business with and assign those 51% to.
Now, the final question, and I know you've been through a long day and everyone's ready for a break. Just the last question. You were mentioning in a response to Mr. Baker about how the easements were separated from the rest of the property.
Yes.
As I understand, but please correct me, when the property, and I'm referring right now to the several lots that were acquired that comprised the property, except the concession, let's leave the concession aside, or the concession area, the property owned by La Canícula aside. The rest of the property was comprised by several lots that you, through the companies that were established, acquired, Inversiones Costco, and as you acquired through different periods of time.
That's right, correct. From Carlos Monet.
Correct. Why was, and you mentioned how it was not Mr. Mucio, but an attorney who carried out the separation, let me call it, because I think that's the word that has been used before, the fragmentation of the easement from the whole of the property, the development. What was the business purpose of separating that area from the rest of the property? Was there a business decision, or was this the legal decision? Because it was not a project decision, as I understood you to say, because this was not the idea of Mr. Mucio, but rather was the idea of the attorney.
Yes.
What was the business rationale?
Okay, that's a fair question, a good question.
Because it has been
Yeah,
the
it's been-
issue
oh,
in
yeah,
this
it's been-
arbitration. It's not.
Yeah,
My question simply arises because this is an issue that has been raised in the arbitration.
Absolutely. So, getting back to your first observation, you're right. After we made the initial purchase from Mr. Carlos Monet, he had I think 3 more parcels in there that we bought. And then later, I believe it was Juan Carlos, and they were in separate, catastrophes. And Juan Carlos then merged them into one property. So we had this one property that we bought from Carlos Monet. In discussions with my attorney, Gabriel Perez, and I think maybe has some discussions with Juan Carlos about this as well, but they said, look, you got road frontage all around the project. And the law in Costa Rica is if you're on a road that you can get access to, you don't need to get to do extensive permitting processes with EV process, but you can, just come off of the main road, get a permit for that, for whatever you want to get, and build. So that's why it was done, because it was easy to get to along the main road. You could have access to these various lots, and you could, the business plan was, that you could develop these things fairly quickly, because according to Costa Rica law. Now, again, I want to stress that we followed the law. We didn't do something illegal. I mean, they're jumping on all this illegal stuff we did, but all of this was done with the advice of counsel. And so I'm relying on the attorneys down there, and the one document that the prosecutor showed me was from Rolando Leclay, and his father's a famous, they know him all in Costa Rica, famous politician. And when we were, I said, look, come up with a plan for, something. I forget what I asked him to do, but it was years ago. But he came up with a formal plan of doing something on the concession. So, so the same thing with Gabriel Perez. We were talking, and he said, look, he says, the law is, if you have property on the main road, you can subdivide it out, and you don't have to be concerned with the EV because it's along the main road. And things along the main road, they have access to everything. They have access to electric, they have access to the road, they have access to the water main runs along the road. So it's not like you're developing something on the interior where you have to put heavy infrastructure in, like, roads and underground electricity and sewage treatment plants and all of the rest of it. So that was the motivation for that. But it was based upon legal advice from an attorney, and as far as I was told, it was perfectly legal. And from what I've heard from our legal experts, and I think you'll hear from Mr. Ortiz later, but it was perfectly legal.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have, Mr. Aven. I don't know if counsel for your counsel or counsel for the Republic of Costa Rica have any follow-up questions on those that have been presented by the tribunal.
Not really a question, sir, but just for the record, when you took Mr. Aven to the document at C242, you'd have heard him refer to other related contracts, and just for your reference, those documents, there's a trust agreement which is at C237, and there's the agreement for purchase which is at C8.
Correct.
Nothing further from us, sir. Thank you.
Mark? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Aven. You are now released as witness, and of course you can continue to remain here in the hearing room.
I want to thank the panel for listening to me, and maybe I apologize for any things I did that was a little bit, I don't know, out of the way, but I appreciate
Nothing that anyone else in your position would not have done.
Thank you.
So should now be a good time to take a 10-minute break?
Indeed, sir.
Okay, then thank you.